think that one of the biggest myths is that accountants in general are seen as kind of like just very boring people. They sit behind a desk, they do the numbers, they're in Excel doing the numbers, and they're not typically very personable. Um, and I like to think that we're not that. But I know a lot of other firms and accountants that are very forward thinking. They're utilizing technology well. They have great personality. They know how to talk to clients. Um, and so I think that myth of like the old school accountant that is just not very personable is might be true in some cases, but in a lot of cases, there's a lot of accountants out there that are I would say pretty fun and exciting people to work with.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Dave Ashworth. And today we're going to be talking about a few different things, kind of talking a little bit about business development, who to target, how to find out who you're going after and define your client, and then doing some marketing around that. Probably talk a little bit about networking and building a referral network and partnerships, and maybe even get into a little bit of the financial side and accounting of businesses and how you track your numbers and what you should keep your eye on and kind of what systems to pick and all those good stuff. So with that much as a introduction, welcome on the podcast, Dave.
Thanks, Devin. Thanks for having me.
So now, just as a quick reminder to the audience, so Dave has been a guest on the Inventive Journey. So if you want to go check out that sister podcast that we have, definitely go to check out his episode, and you'll get some great details and additional information on Dave and his journey. But for today, assuming that they haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, say, hey, I just want to get to the expertise. I don't want to go listen to another episode, even though I encourage you to. But give us a bit of an introduction, kind of who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Dave Ashworth. I run a company called the Quantify Group. We've been in business now for a little over 10 years. I've been in the accounting industry for about 14 years now. So right out of school, I worked at a large public accounting firm, worked there for about 3.5 years, got my CPA, and then decided to go out on my own. My background was in tax, so tax preparation and planning. So that's what I started my business as. But over time, we've evolved and now we're doing more outsourced accounting, controller, some bookkeeping work, really focused on that small business community and getting those clients the expertise that they need, the information they need to make good sound financial decisions so that they can grow their business and meet their goals. So that's what I'm up to today.
Awesome. Well, sounds like plenty to keep you busy and engaged. And so now with that, now as we kind of dive into a bit of the areas of expertise and I think things that would be helpful to the audience, maybe starting it a bit at business development. And I think that one's always a hard one, business development. It can take on, a couple different flavors. And one is networking, which maybe we'll talk about in a little bit, but even more in general on business development is kind of finding your clients. Who is your target? Who do you go after? How do you define them and all those things? Because I think that can be a difficult area. Everybody thinks they know who their client is or their ideal client is right up until they go try and sell it to them and they find out half the time they're wrong or that they have to take it in a different direction than what they thought. So with that, kind of how do you go about with business development, defining the clients and targeting them and figuring out who you to go after?
Yeah, I think that's the first step in any development of business, any marketing. You need to know who you're marketing to, who your ideal client is, in order to craft your message and your marketing around that. Because if you don't do that, if I am marketing to, $100,000 business and I'm marketing to $100 million business, well, my messaging is going to be very different to those two businesses, and I need to understand, which one I'm going after and how to develop the message around that. For me, that's uh, kind of just been trial and error. I know when I first started my business, it was just kind of taking whoever we could get, whoever would pay a bill, right? Just to try to build something. But over time, we've really been able to dial in clients for us twofold. One, that we bring the most value to, but also then on the flip side, the ones that we're also most profitable with as well from a business standpoint. So it's been kind of twofold there. And then the biggest thing that I found is, and this is something that we, are still tweaking all the time, is getting as detailed with the description of your ideal client as possible, right? And there's a reason for that. One, again, I talked about the messaging and understanding how to reach them. But also as you're, and we'll get, like you said, we'll get into this later, but as you're dealing with, and building your network and your potential partners, the more detail you can provide them, the much better chance you're going to have of them actually thinking about you. If I told you, hey, we work with any small business in the world, right? The chances that every time you come across a small business, you're going to think of us is probably pretty slim because it's too broad. But if I said, hey, we work with software companies that are doing 1 to 2 million in revenue that are located in Pennsylvania, and I want to talk to the CEO. If you come across a CEO of a software company doing 1 to 2 million in revenue in Pennsylvania, there's probably a pretty good chance that you're going to think of us because I've really narrowed that down. So I think there's so many advantages to doing that, to really getting detailed behind who you're going after, and then just crafting the right message to reach those people properly.
No, I think that definitely is, defining those. Now, one question that I think that sometimes, people have a difficult, differentiating with is when you're defining your clients or your customers, even before you go after them, how do you go about defining them? Is it, you go and talk with 100 people on the street and say, what would it catch your attention? Or you say, would you buy this? Do you customer surveys, or do you ask all your friends and family, or kind of how do you go about even defining your ideal client that you're looking to market, you're potentially networking with, and building those networks before you even get to all that? And you started to touch on that, but maybe drill down just a bit. How do you actually, what are some of the activities that you go about defining them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first I would look at what your skills are and what you enjoy doing, first of all. So really start with yourself, because if you're not utilizing the skills that you have and you're not following what you're really passionate about and what you love doing, then you're already getting off on the wrong foot. So start there, then see those skills and those passions you have. Where could that serve a need, right? So get an idea, get a general idea of who that could serve, and then start to figure out, what that service offering could look like as far as pricing, who could afford that, etc. And then kind of what I would do then I would start asking around and taking it to market and saying, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Is this something that would make sense, right? Start asking, a bunch of people, hey, if you were a business owner, would this make sense? How can I tweak this? Does this make sense? So I think just defining some of those things in the beginning, again, what you love doing, where your skill set is, where you think that the value that you're bringing is, and then what is that worth to your potential clients, and then starting to do some market research around that. That's probably how I would approach it. A big point there is be willing to tweak what you have, because you're probably going to be wrong in some capacity with where the value is, and how much you could charge, etc. There's going to be things that are going to change based on the responses that you're getting back. And you have to be willing to change. At the end of the day, the market is going to dictate a lot of what you do and how much you charge. That's just the reality. Like if you say, I want to make $1,000 a month on this, but the market's only willing to pay 100, you're probably not going to be able to make 1,000. So you have to kind of let the market dictate some of that as well.
No, I think that's absolutely right. So now let's kind of so let's say you got the target market defined, you got your ideal client or customer that you're going to reach out to and start developing. You start targeting them. one of the difficulties I think a lot of people struggle with or dislike, or a combination of both, is doing networking. Because
Mm-hmm.
generally the idea of networking is you go find a BNI group or a big group where a whole bunch of people get together. Everybody's trying to pitch their items, or what their services or their products are. Nobody's really listening or trying to help out with people, and all it is becomes an uncomfortable thing that some people thrive at and love because they're salespeople, and everybody else generally just dislikes because it's uncomfortable. And so within that, how do you go about building out a referral network and partnerships, and how do you go about tackling that such that it's not one of those where you wince every time or the idea comes up?
Yeah, I think you have to, again, I think, and this will probably be a recurring theme of mine, and this is just my belief when it comes to marketing, is you need to figure out what you enjoy doing. I'll just tell you for myself. So like I'm not very comfortable in like a big networking event. Going up to random people, that's not really my thing. I've never really enjoyed doing that. I've done some of that early on in the business. What I do enjoy doing though is connecting with people one on one, connecting in smaller groups, really building rapport, building relationships. And so for me, that's how I've done my networking, because I know that that's where I have the most skills and what I enjoy the most, and that will come through in whatever I'm doing. And so networking doesn't necessarily have to be a networking event. You don't have to go to events and hand out business cards and shake a bunch of hands. Now, some people are really good at that and they can, gain a lot from doing that. So if that's you, that's awesome. But there's a lot of other things you can do networking as far as meeting people. Um, and it's just something you have to be very intentional about. So for me, like I do a lot of networking on LinkedIn. I leverage a lot of my clients and their relationships. So when I get a new client, I figure out who are the people they trust, who are the people they work with. I want to meet them because they're working with an ideal client of mine. That's a good
Hmm.
way to network. And then if I'm, feel like I'm in a rut, I'm not meeting as many people as I could to kind of build my network. Then let's say you and I were meeting, as kind of a business networking thing. At the end of the meeting, I would say, hey, who else do you know that you like, that you think would be a good fit for me? And then usually I could leave a meeting with 1 to 3 other names, and then I just keep doing that over and over, and you'll meet a bunch of really good people that way. So again, I think it comes back to doing something that you love and something that you're good at, and then kind of building it from there.
No, I think that's definitely makes sense. And, I think that's one that everybody a bit struggles on, because I think we're all told, hey, you need to go out and network, you need to make connections, you need to do all those things. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, but it's also one that I think people struggle with finding the way that makes them feel comfortable, that's going to work for them, or that are otherwise, is going to fit within what they feel comfortable with. And so, now we shift gears just a bit, because one of the other things that you have a bit of a background and experience on is on the financial and accounting side, which is a bit
Mm-hmm.
what your business does. And and I think that that's, again, I feel like we're hitting on all the things that people just kind of cringe at for the most part. Some people like finances, some people like the accounting side. Most people, they keep track of their expenses the best they can. They hope they do it right, and they go give it all to their accountant at the end of the year and hope that it's done correctly. But with that, what are some of the things that, if you're taking a small or startup or a small business, and they're not going to be able to hire a full-time CPA or, a CFO or those type of things, and they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to do it themselves, what are some of the numbers they should be tracking, keeping their eyes on, and maybe what are some of the systems that are helpful to do so?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with just some of the systems. So, I mean, the first thing I would recommend getting is some sort of an accounting system. You can use Excel if you're small. You could certainly do that to start. And then there's kind of ones that progress from there. I mean, QuickBooks is obviously the most popular one. So I would recommend starting with that probably if you can, and learning that, and just to keep track of everything that's going in and out of the business. So really, it's as simple as that. First off, I would make sure you have a separate bank account and a separate credit card if you use credit card for the business. That's one way right off the bat to keep things separated and keep things a little more organized. And then it's as simple as, at the end of the month, take your bank statement, pull all the transactions into the accounting software, categorize them into the right categories. And then, you should be able to see like a profit and loss statement to see how much money you're making, and see a balance sheet to see, what are your assets, the things that you own, and what people owe you. What are your liabilities? What do you owe other people? And then the equity, how much of the business do you own essentially? That's kind of the general thing, but anything business related should be tracked and should be put in a category, so you can see those things to see if you are profitable, see if you are making money. And that will then allow you to make tweaks in your business, so that you can be more profitable, or you can start to look to hire people, or put a plan together of where you need to grow to meet your goals. Without tracking that stuff, you're kind of just flying blind. You're not really knowing how you're actually doing. It's just kind of a feeling. And when it comes to running a business, you really need to understand your numbers, because they're gonna, at the end of the day, the numbers are gonna tell the story about how your business is actually doing.
Mm. Now let me ask the kind of the flip side, which is, everybody kind of wonders when you are tracking, when you're doing a business, does it really matter? Is it really important, or should you really, or pay attention to the numbers? Now, I'm guessing there's probably a right answer there. But, what is the motivation or of tracking those numbers? In other words, hey, all I want to do is a lot of times people say, I just want to get out and sell, or I just want to go out and make the product, or I want to go out and do the things that build a business. And the numbers really don't, in their mind, quote unquote, don't really do that, or it just takes the time away from the things that I'm passionate and enjoy. So it's kind of, what is you're trying to get yourself excited or motivated or otherwise, and understand the importance, kind of tracking some of that information you hit on, what's the value there? What's the motivation?
So what I typically will tell people is, yes, you are in this business because you're passionate about whatever you're doing, selling this product or service or whatever. But I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we start businesses to make money, right? We wouldn't, if we wanted to just do something that we enjoy doing, we could go and do it for somebody else, or we could just do it for free, right? If we didn't want to make money. So we start businesses to make money. Uh, and so it's important to understand how that is actually going. Um, I also think a lot of people say, well, I don't want to work all of this time. I just want to work and make a good living, right? So I'm not going to keep track of the numbers. I'm just going to work and make a good living. And the reality is you may actually be able to work less, if you're tracking things properly, because you may be able to identify things that can add profit to your business. But without doing that, you're not going to be able to do that, right? Without keeping track of your numbers. Like an example would be, a business. I've run into this a lot, actually. Businesses that have been around for 10 years, they're making money, right? They measure that by how much money they have in their bank accounts, and they have money, right? And that's okay. That's great. But there's an opportunity there where maybe you could be actually working less and making more money if you're actually tracking your numbers and making decisions based off what those numbers were telling you to do.
Hmm.
But instead, you're just looking at it from a standpoint of, do I have money in my bank or not? And if you don't want to maximize the profit, if you want to work maybe more than you should, then that's totally fine. And a lot of people do that. But if you talk about like, hey, I want to make this business as profitable as I can, I want to work, less hours to spend more time doing other things, but still make the same amount or more money, you need to track your numbers, and there's no other way around it.
Hmm. No, I think that's a good point. And I like a little bit of, the thought, or kind of bringing up the point that a lot of times, if you know your numbers, kind of what you're tracking, where the business at, where it's profitable, where it's not, all of those type of things, where the clients are at, all of those things, it can actually reduce the amount of time. It can help you to focus or tailor your business so that you're working less hours, being more profitable. And a lot of times, if you don't keep track of that, or if you don't have an idea of where that's at, you often spend a lot of time spinning wheels on projects that may not be as profitable, versus and negating or putting aside the things that may be actually more beneficial. So I think that that's definitely a great thing to track on and to hit on. So Well, with that, so as people are, getting that, and you mentioned one, QuickBooks, and that's a pretty big one. Is there any other kind of tools or systems or things that they should be considering implementing that would be helpful to their business?
Yeah, so if you have payroll, so there's I would highly recommend getting some sort of payroll provider. A lot of them have like an online platform just to take that burden off your plate of filing your payroll tax returns and making sure things are getting your taxes are getting remitted properly. So definitely look at that. There's a couple tools on the payable side. We like a tool called bill.com where all of your bills from vendors go into this portal. Then you could see a list of all your bills, when they're due, how much you owe, etc. You can approve those, and then bill.com will then send out the payment for you. It just streamlines your bill paying process. It integrates with QuickBooks as well. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there. Those are a couple of the big ones. Paying your bills and your payroll, and then your actual accounting software. I guess one other one would be some sort of a document management system where you're just storing receipts and invoices and just documents for yourself and staying organized. That way, if things come up in the future and you say, hey, last year in January, we had a bill for this. I don't remember exactly what that was. It's on my books. You can either attach it in QuickBooks or you can go to your document management and say, okay, go to January, look at the bills for that month, pull it up. It's a good way to keep track of things as well. And then you'll just have it for the future, for as long as you need it.
Awesome. Well, definitely a lot of great tips, and certainly and very insightful. So, well, now as we wrap towards the end of this episode, I always have one question I love to wrap up the episode with. So we'll jump to that now. So the question is within your industry, what is one of the biggest myths, and why is it wrong?
I think that one of the biggest myths is that accountants in general are seen as kind of like just very boring people. They sit behind a desk, they do the numbers, they're in Excel doing the numbers, and they're not typically very personable. And I like to think that we're not that. But I know a lot of other firms and accountants that are very forward thinking. They're utilizing technology well. They have great personality. They know how to talk to clients. And so I think that myth of like the old school accountant that is just not very personable, is might be true in some cases. But in a lot of cases, there's a lot of accountants out there that are I would say pretty fun and exciting people to work with.
No, I think that's there's probably a lot, and that's probably a lot of truth within the legal industry as well, and a bit of a different in the sense that a lot of times people think one, attorneys are either staunchy or they're kind of ambulance chasers, or they're
Mhm.
underhanded or crooked, or there's all sorts of nomenclatures of the legal industry that kind of have that same idea. And yet I think that there's a lot of times, if you're to look under the hood, there's a lot of better people that that are out there. You can find the good ones and that make sense, and definitely were worthwhile. So, well, perfect. Well, as people want to reach out to, they want to use your accounting service and other services to help grow their business. They have any questions? They want to be a customer. They want to be a client. They want to be an employee. They want to be an investor. They want to be your next best friend. Any or all of the above. What's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, so I mean I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, so just Dave Ashworth, CPA on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with whoever's listening. And then you can go on our website, thequantifygroup.com. All my contact information is there. We have a contact form, so if either of those are great to reach me. I check all of those every single day. So, love to connect with anybody out there, and I love helping people too. So I don't need I don't need you to come to us just if you want to be a client. If you have a question, if you have a question about QuickBooks, or I can help with anything, I truly do love helping people, and I'd be happy to talk to whoever and help with what I can.
Awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate the offer, and encourage the audience to reach out, and definitely leverage some services and other get your questions answered to help to grow your business and to be able to continue to be successful. And so, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, just a couple things. If you can leave us a review, share, and click subscribe to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome episodes and you're able to gain the expertise to make your business even more successful. And with that, thank you again, Dave, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Cool. Thanks for having me.